Hello, Rabbi. How you doing?
Hello, I'll be right with you. Just trying to set up the YouTube
Okay.
screen share. Give me a moment, please. You all well, Kent?
All good, thank you. Are you, Rabbi?
Thank God.
Hello.
Thank God. What is going on here? Why am I getting... Why am I getting the tennis instead of the Rambam?
Both are a challenge.
Let's see. Okay. Screen share. Sorry. Try that again. There we go. Okay. So now we're on YouTube and we have the screen share. Right. So it's 101 and it's me and you, Kent. Private share.
Seems like it. Yeah, I'm happy.
Public holiday. Everybody's having a braai to honor human rights.
Yeah, especially in Ukraine.
Levite. Tell you, it's mind-boggling that these two Rabbi Wolfs in Odessa and Kherson are distant cousins of mine.
Gosh.
I mean, I have video clips of them celebrating Purim, besieged cities, Russian occupied cities, and they're celebrating Purim.
Right.
I tell you, it's mind-boggling. It's awe-inspiring. I take my yarmulke off to these guys. Such total commitment and dedication, literally sacrifice, putting their lives in danger.
Yeah.
I mean, the one guy left, he took the orphans out and he came back. Millions of people are going out and he was the only one going in at the border post.
Amazing.
May Hashem protect them all.
Amen, amen.
All right. How's the weather in Cape Town? Here it's raining.
Yeah, beautiful day here at the moment. Light breeze, otherwise sun shining. Nice.
I've seen so much rain. This year it hasn't stopped raining.
Yeah.
So we are going to conclude Para Aduma today, and you have Mitzorah to look forward to tomorrow. So it's still book of Tahara, of purity. Okay. If it's me and you, so be it. Right. Perik Chamisha Osa, chapter 15. Any person or article which touches sanctified water for a purpose other than sprinkling contracts impurity. We're talking about the special water that was sanctified for the purpose of mixing with the ashes of the red heifer, and which would then be sprinkled upon those who are tomei from contact with the dead, and this would be part of their purification process. But as we learned in my chapter last week, we spoke about a whole variety of people carrying the water to the ashes. If they stopped to do anything that was out of the line of duty, it would be a distraction and would disqualify the waters. So here too we see along similar lines that if the sanctified water comes in contact with people or objects not for its stated purpose, which is to purify the impure with the ashes of the red heifer, then it too is going out of its norm, and this will actually bring impurity rather than the purity which it's meant to bring. So if it touches a person, he becomes tomei, but not his clothing. And he quotes the verse, Numbers 19, when it touches the sprinkling water, become impure until the evening. Thus it is derived that the sprinkling water is a primary source of impurity according to biblical law, and even the slightest amount imparts tumah. If there is enough water to sprinkle, so now more than the slightest amount will make a person tomei. If there's more than the slightest amount, it's now enough water to actually do the sprinkling on a tomei person. Excuse me. Then it will impart impurity more so, even when touched and when carried. And one who touches it or carries it for a purpose other than sprinkling imparts tumah not only to himself, but also to his clothing. And he quotes the verse, one who sprinkles the water shall launder his garments, which means that his garments became tomei and they would have to be immersed in a mikveh. That's what laundering means, not going to the wash machine. This is not speaking about someone who sprinkles water on an impure person, for if he purifies an impure person, one can certainly in front of him. So, yeah, we're not talking about the Kohen who does the act of the purification process. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about if it happens outside of the purification process unnecessarily. That's when it causes impurity. According to the oral tradition, it was taught that the Torah statement, one who sprinkles the water shall launder his garments, was stated only to teach the measure that imparts impurity, meaning how much water do you need to impart impurity? It has to be enough water that could have been sprinkled on a person to purify them. How much is that? So he says enough to immerse the tops of the stalks of hyssop in the water. You will recall that the formula that was made for the purpose of purifying those who had come in contact with the dead was not only the ashes of the red heifer and the special holy water, but also they had hyssop, because that was a symbol of humility. And there were some other items in the formula as well. Hello, Stephen. Welcome. We started. We're still in the first halacha. So how much is a measure of sprinkling? He doesn't tell us how many milliliters or ounces. He says enough to immerse the tops of the stalks of hyssop. So how much can that be already? It's not immerse, not to sprinkle on, but to immerse. So I don't know, how big is a hyssop? How big is a stalk of a hyssop? I'm not sure if it means that the whole stalk has to be immersed. That would be quite a big amount. That might be a whole glass or a whole more. Or if it's just the tops, it says to immerse the tops, wouldn't be that much. When does the statement that the water for this purification imparts impurity apply? When one touched it or carried it for an intent other than sprinkling before they were used for the mitzvah. So you're on your way to mix the water with the red heifer ashes to purify people who are tamei, and on the way it touched someone else, which is unnecessary, a diversion, and it will impart impurity. But after they were used for the mitzvah, they purified someone who was tamei, then they will not impart impurity at all, because there's no diversion. You've already done the job. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Rabbi.
So one immersed
Hello.
the hyssop in the sanctified water and sprinkled it on an impure person or on kalim, on objects, utensils. And the water was dripping and descending from the impure person to the ground. Or when he sprinkled the water, water was sprinkled on the ground or on a pure person. That water is pure, and one who touches or carries it will remain pure. So that is once it was already done. On the way to do it is a problem. If one immersed the hyssop to sprinkle water on an object that is not susceptible to tumah, the water which drips from it is fit to be sprinkled again. Therefore, they impart the impurity of sanctified water to one who touches or carries them, because they have not yet been used for the mitzvah to purify anyone. For the immersion of the hyssop was for the intent of sprinkling on something that is not susceptible to impurity. So it's a diversion from its stated task, and it will therefore impart impurity. Halacha number 2, the water for the purification process involving the ashes of the red heifer does not impart impurity to anything before its mitzvah is performed, unless it is pure and acceptable to be used for sprinkling. Different rules apply, however, if this water was disqualified. For example, other water was mixed with it, or an animal drank from it, or other factors that disqualify it arose. We discussed this in previous chapters. The person who is pure with regard to truma, that means, a kohen who eats truma has to be in a state of purity, and it's quite a demanding state of purity for truma. If such a person touches it, he contracts impurity, whether he touched it with his hand or with other parts of his body. The person who is pure with regard to this purification process touches it, even with his hand, he remains pure as he was originally. So he differentiates between a level of tahara. If you're so pure that you could eat truma, which is a higher level, a more demanding level of purity, then you will become impure by touching this water. If you are not such a high level of purity, then you will remain pure. 3, if sanctified water contracted impurity, and a person who was pure with regard to truma touched it together, whether with his hands or with his body, after the contracted impurity, he will sort of obviously contract impurity. If a person who had purified himself for this purification process touches it with his hands, he contracts impurity. But if he touches it with the remainder of his body, not his hands, he remains pure as he was originally. 4, the following rules apply if water from a spring, a mikveh, or fruit juice falls into this sanctified water that is on its way to the red heifer ashes. If the majority is sanctified water, the mixture imparts impurity when carried. So it will have if the majority is the original sanctified water, that will retain its original state with all the laws pertaining thereto, and it will therefore impart impurity if it comes in contact with things unnecessary. If the majority is fruit juice, meaning not the sanctified water, now it loses that status, so it will not impart impurity. However, if it's 50-50, if it's half and half, we'll take the stricter view and it will impart impurity. Following laws apply if the ashes of the red heifer became mixed with ashes from an oven. So you have the ashes of the red heifer, and now they get mixed with other ashes, normal sort of ordinary ashes. And a person sanctified water with the entire mixture. So he took the sanctified water, mixed it with the ash of the red heifer, but those ashes were mixed with other unholy ashes, or not the designated ashes of the red heifer. So again, goes by the majority. If the majority of the mixture are ash of the red heifer, the water imparts impurity like sanctified water. If the majority are oven ashes, the water does not impart impurity when touched, but does impart impurity when carried. When acceptable ashes were sprinkled on water that was not fit to be sanctified, so you took red heifer ashes and mixed it with water that was not sanctified water, and then a person who was pure with regard to truma touched the water with his hands or his body, he will become impure. The person who purified himself for this purification process touched such water even with his hands, he remains pure as he was originally. So again, we have the distinction between different levels of tahara. The tahara, the purity required for truma, is a higher, more demanding level, and therefore it is stricter here. 6, when sanctified water is disqualified because an animal drank from it or something like that, you should still look after it. You shouldn't just treat it as ordinary water. So you should not mix it with mud, for example, so as not to create a stumbling block for others, lest they touch the mud and become impure. For the sanctified water does not become nullified in the mud, as implied by the verse in Numbers, it is a sin offering, chatosi, so it will still impart impurity. Now, if you mix it with mud, nobody will know that that mud has some degree of sanctity, and you could become tameh by touching mud. Who would think of that? So therefore, if you mix it with mud, you're causing an obstacle to people who would not know. You're creating a stumbling block before the blind. 7, when a cow drinks from sanctified water, it doesn't affect the cow. Its meat is pure, even if it was slaughtered on the same day, within 24 hours. And he quotes the verse as safe keeping as water for sprinkling, mishmeres l'mei nida, Numbers 19, meaning that when the water is kept safe, it is not nullified. So it will still have the status of its sanctity. If, however, a cow drank from it, it is nullified because it was not kept safe. And I must confess that I'm struggling to understand what this means.
I don't understand.
And that makes 2 of us.
It's the question of keeping safe, whether it's kept safe or not.
I'm trying to understand the difference between the first part of 7 and the last part of 7.
The difference is in the
I
word.
looked over this before and I didn't understand it then.
I think it's the word it is being used twice separately. On the one hand, the cow itself is not affected and he's pure, but the water becomes nullified and because the water wasn't kept safe, not the cow. I think that's what it means.
Let's see if that works with the Hebrew.
The distinction is whether it was kept safe or not. Anyway. Do you have any notes there, Rabbi?
No, there are no notes. I have a printed copy here of the Chayenu, but there are no notes on this paragraph. Tell me again what you said, Kent.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the first part says when a cow drinks, its meat is pure. In other words, it doesn't affect the cow in any way.
Yeah.
But then it's talking later, if the cow does drink from the water, then it, in other words, the water, I think is nullified because it's not kept safe. I think the word it has got a different meaning in the first sentence and the last sentence.
Okay, that sounds actually reasonable. Thank you for that. I certainly don't have a better interpretation, so thank you very much. So the water will be nullified by the cow drinking. Yes, we had learned that previously, that that's one of the disqualifications. Okay, thank you very much. 8. When water, okay, now this is, okay, so a guy's walking down the road and water is sprinkled on a person from a window above, and there's many people walking and they all get sprinkled with this water from a window over where they're walking. And then this one fellow who got sprinkled with this water from the window goes into the temple. And then it's discovered that the water was disqualified. So that would mean that he becomes Tomei. Now you're not allowed to go onto the Temple Mount in a state of Tumah. It's quite a very grave transgression if you knowingly, willingly go onto the Temple Mount in a state of Tumah. That's why today most religious Jews will not go up the Temple Mount, even though we will argue that the Israeli authorities should allow Jews to go there from a political point of view and from a Jewish pride point of view. It's ours, not the Dome of the Rocks. But at the same time, halachically, because we're not sure exactly which parts of the Temple Mount are sacred and which are not, it's dangerous to go there. And I would have to, whilst I would argue for the right of Jews to go onto the Temple Mount, I would have to advise any Jew not to actually go because you may be violating a serious biblical transgression. The penalty was quite severe, actually. So this guy got sprinkled with this water, but unbeknownst to him, the water was disqualified. Then he went on Temple Mount, so now he's gone in a state of Tumah. So he's exempt. What is he exempt from? He's exempt from bringing a guilt offering for inadvertently entering the temple in a state of Tumah. So normally, if you do something inadvertently, you would, if you do this, well, some things you bring a sin, more things you bring a sin offering. In this case, you would bring a guilt offering. But because he is innocent, he is considered as one who transgressed because of factors beyond his control. He's exempt from bringing the guilt offering. If, however, water was sprinkled on a person from the window of a private individual, and he entered the temple and afterwards discovered the water was disqualified, then he will be obligated to bring an adjustable guilt offering. Adjustable means adjustable according to your means. If you can afford it, you bring an ox. If you can't, you bring a bird or meal offering. Why is this case, is he more guilty than the previous case? Because he should have investigated the status of the water and only afterwards entered the temple. So what's the difference between the first paragraph and the second paragraph? Here, the water is sprinkled on many individuals. And in the second paragraph, it came from the window of a private individual. So it sounds like in the first case, seemed like an official sprinkling, that somebody who was charged with that responsibility was sprinkling people to make them pure before they go onto the temple ground. Here, it was just an individual. So who knows what kind of individual? He should have checked if this guy knows what he's doing or not. Even if people would slip on water that had been sprinkled from window, from which water was sprinkled on many individuals and was flowing on the ground, and they would tread on it, they would enter the temple without being concerned that they had been disqualified. So stepping on the water is not a problem. 9, when a person sprinkles such water using a hyssop that is impure with regard to this sacrificial process, if it is the size of an egg, which is the minimum to impart impurity, the water is impure and the sprinkling is unacceptable. If it is less than the size of an egg, the water is pure, but the sprinkling is obviously still unacceptable. And this hyssop can impart impurity to another, and that other to still another, even up to 100 people. And usually when the halacha says up to 100 people, what does it mean? Does it stop at 100? No, it means ad infinitum. 100 is just used as an exaggerated number, because levels of impurity are not counted with regard to the purification process involving the ashes of the red heifer. So the ashes of the red heifer have a stronger degree of gravity, and therefore they can impart impurity almost ad infinitum. Normally we say you go avatum, rishon, sheni, shlishi, revi. After number 4, then that's the end of it. Can't impart anymore. Here there's no end. And finally, number 10, when a person lifts up a kli, a utensil, upon which this water has been sprinkled, and now he's holding the utensil that was touched by the water, and enough water to be sprinkled remains on the utensil, he is still pure. But once the water has performed its mitzvah, it does not impart impurity, as we have explained previously. In the Hebrew here we have, it's actually Aramaic, Berich Rachmono Desayon. Blessed be the all-merciful one, meaning Hashem, who has helped us to conclude this section of the laws of Para Aduma. So Yashikach to all of you, congratulations on finishing another section. Tomorrow you'll start a new section, which is the laws of the Mitzvah, the leprous curse. A quick quiz. The verse which states that one who sprinkles the water shall launder his garments teaches us A, B, or C. Any guesses?
I would say number 1.
B, no, B is correct. Number 2.
Me.
He taught us explicitly that the Rambam said that whole verse is just to teach us how much water is necessary. If regular water got mixed with sanctified water, one who is pure if it's touches, does he become impure?
I think so. Maybe not.
No.
Let's see the chapter and verse. Number 2. If other water was mixed with it, so we distinguish between someone who was tameh as far as teruma and other things. If ashes got mixed with ordinary ashes and water was sanctified from it, does the water and is touched?
Number 2.
Only right. Thank you. We said it
Jared. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
We said if it's 50-50, it's the same. Finally, number 4, if an animal drinks from sanctified water, is its meat pure?
Yes.
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 Shkayach. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Wish you a good
Thank
year.
you.
Have
Thank
a
you,
very,
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
very happy Human Rights Day. Enjoy the public holiday. And
Rabbi, did you
Water.
officiate for Bernice's tombstone unveiling?
I did the unveiling today, yes.
Oh, because it wasn't live streamed, so I couldn't
No, it wasn't.
join. Yeah, I couldn't join. And I've got regards for you, but I can't remember from who.
Well, I won't venture at this.
But regards in any case.
I'm not going to sleep tonight, Dave. You know that.
Yeah, yeah. Me
I'm going to
too.
talk all night to wonder who sent me regards.
Yeah, it'll come back to me.
Sorry,
Sorry,